Adam.
Thanks, Adam.
Yeah, thanks, man.
This is going to be a ton of fun. Hey, if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, we're a few minutes early. Just give us a thumbs up. Okay. We'll figure out. Okay, we'll see if everything's working. When we get to trimming, we'll trim this part right off. But where are you guys at right now?
We are currently mooch docking at my family's house outside of Houston. So
miraculously, they have a long, flat driveway that can fit a 40-foot diesel pusher.
And my dad enticed us. It's basically they condescend because they want to just hang out with their granddaughter. So my dad installed a 50 amp hookup. So when a pandemic hits and your family has full hookups and childcare, you go there. So that's where we are.
Yeah. Of course, it makes perfect sense. And RV Geeks are saying they can hear us on YouTube. Adriana says that she can hear us on Facebook. So I guess we're coming through loud and clear. And
hey, John, Peter.
Sorry?
I was just saying hey to John and Peter.
Oh, of course. We know they're in BC. You guys are in Texas. I'm in Ontario, Canada. Obviously, this is not my rig, and I can't wait to get back on the road. But I do see your beautiful rig behind you. Why don't you give us like the 3-second tour of your Winnebago?
Well, we actually can because this camera comes off, so we can.
Oh, nice! Go for it.
Yeah. So kitchen, where we just recently made a cocktail to celebrate the interview.
We got the whiskey and lime.
Yeah. So
kitchen, living area. This is our office with our desk and everything, and then we've got a bedroom and 2 full bathrooms.
And you missed your massive planner. Our RVs or homes are not complete unless we have we love having like massive calendars. That's like a staple in every home we've ever had.
But we actually have, we don't have wall space for it. We have sliding door space for it, which is good because then if you don't want everyone to see your calendar, it just slides away. No one sees it.
So we got in this rig in December, and we had every anticipation of our main goal this year being to go find property because after being on the road for 5 years, we want to buy a campground, and this also has space for our daughter, and so she can we can fit her pack and play in the bedroom when she's napping in the daytime, and we put her in the bathroom in the back, which sounds weird, but it
sounds like child abuse. It works. This bedroom.
Yeah.
I hear you. Well, everybody, let us know where you're watching from, whether you're watching on YouTube or whether you're watching on Facebook. And just let us know where you're watching from today. And guys, I will say that from the little I could see out the window, I am jealous of your weather compared to Ontario, Canada right now. So how has your weather been in Texas?
It's actually been amazing. Today was lows in the 60s when we woke up, nice breeze, highs in the 80s, lots of sunshine. It's a little bit warm, but we're parked in the shade. It's the rig doesn't get hot,
Yeah. It's been pleasant.
It's been awesome. Yeah. We couldn't ask for better quarantine weather.
Yeah. A month ago, we were quarantining, and we still are, but we were we were in tornado country in Alabama because we were out there to host our conference, and then everything hit. And so we were we're normally able to drive out of these scenarios, but it's been this weird thing with RVers lately.
We couldn't run away.
Yeah, where we couldn't run or we didn't want to be on the road. So, yeah, it's been an interesting year so far for everyone.
Well, because the Ontario weather has been miserable, I'm done talking about weather because it's just going to get my blood pressure going. But I do want to talk a little bit about, obviously, the topic tonight is running a business from the road. And I told you a little bit before we started that your podcast was one of the first resources that I listened to when we were looking to get on the road. So thank you guys for that. And fun fact, it was actually your interview with Peter and John from the RV Geeks. And so now we've come full circle, and somehow I get to be part of this friend circle and really enjoying that. But I do want to talk a little bit about being flexible while you're running your business on the road, because I saw that you had an in-person summit and you had to pivot really quick to get an online summit. So talk to me a little bit about that process. Why did you choose to pivot instead of, canceling or delaying the summit? Just talk to me a little bit about the flexibility you need when you're running a business from the road.
Well, it was like a Thursday whenever everything was happening with the NBA closing, and we decided that we couldn't do the in-person portion of our conference, and it was Sunday that the conference was going to kick off. So it was like a we had a very, very short time frame to then flip everything around, but we already had people there in person who had been hanging out for a couple weeks at that point. So it's weird with our summit because we always go and we stay for a month in that location. And when people come early, it's like our whole event ends up being a month long because we're just constantly hanging out with people. So it was this weird feeling of, well, we can't really cancel the event because we feel like it's already been going on. We've already been hanging out with people, having happy hours, working together, all these sorts of things. So we decided that our best option was just going to be to put it all online. And we had already live streamed our summits in the past for free on Facebook. We were like, well, we know the tech side of it. And that's like the biggest hurdle if you're going to like do a live event, right? Is to figure out actually how to get it online. And so since we had that question answered, we just had to call every single one of our speakers and every single one of our sponsors and make sure that they could still make it online. And that was like the biggest undertaking that Heath did all in one day from an airport while he was trying to fly from California back to Alabama where we were.
Yeah, it was a crazy week. And just for context, if anyone's watching, we've hosted a conference for the past 4 years now called the RV Entrepreneur Summit. So it's basically the goal is to provide community and learning for other people like us who are working and running our business on the road. So this year we were scheduled. I was really excited. We were going to have an RV Entrepreneur Juniors conference, and it was something where we had a lot of families come last year. And we're like, how cool would it be? There's so many families now who travel, and our friends who run full-time families, Jill Dinkins and their partner Dustin, they run, and it's a really great community for people who are building their families on the road as well as maybe like a business or a job. And so she was going to be helping us create this whole curriculum. We had mentors, like fake, like Shark Tank style pitches for people to do.
It's going to be really cute.
It was going to be really cool for the kids to like learn how to create a business and like pitch it to investors. And we had prizes where they could win like a brand design and all this stuff. And it was kind of gut wrenching because as RVers, we look forward to it because it's a time where we get to be around people like us who have chosen to live this lifestyle, be on the road, and do something differently. And I think the harder part was we canceled before we were mandated by the state. And so we didn't know at the time if we were making the right decision. So we had 100 people who had already been there for like a week or two or longer that we were leaving to go host this online event. And in the moment, we felt like we're leaving these people who we came to be a part of this event with us.
And now we can't hang out with them.
And then even if we stayed, we couldn't hang out. Yeah. It was challenging. And in retrospect, things obviously escalated. It got a lot worse.
And it was definitely the right call.
It was definitely the right call. But in the moment, things escalated so quickly that you didn't know what was going to be the right decision to make. And I remember calling Alyssa saying, hey, the NBA canceled. Tom Hanks has COVID. Like, what are we going to do? And
what are we going to do? National treasure, Tom.
I know, but it was all the same timeline. And basically, I don't know that it necessarily correlates to how does that translate to being agile as an RVer and thinking on the road. But that's been something we're all navigating this year.
We decided that what was going to happen is that we had like 72 hours before things were supposed to start happening for our summit. So we just said, we're going to make decisions. We're going to stick with them. And we're going to be 100% okay if we think later that it was the wrong decision, but we just have to act because we don't have time to second guess and go back and forth. And so that really helped us. I think in general in business, that's a downfall Heath and I have of just overthinking, going back and forth, taking like 3 weeks to make a decision. And it was like, no, we have to decide by the end of the hour because we have to send out this information and make it happen.
It was a good exercise that you can get a lot more done when you have to than you think you can.
When you have to.
Yeah.
Now, so obviously being flexible is kind of the nature of being an entrepreneur. And I feel like being an entrepreneur on the road myself, also being on the road requires a ton of flexibility. But when you put the two together, it seems like a whole new world. So were you guys entrepreneurial? Did you have businesses growing up before you got on the road? Were you self-employed before then, or did that kind of happen at the same time as when you started creating Hourly America?
I'll go first. Yeah. So we both had jobs before we left, but I've had businesses. I've always labeled myself an entrepreneur. Like I had a t-shirt business in college. when I was in middle school. Being in my hometown right now reminds me, but I had like a lawn mowing business and stuff. So I've always liked the idea of creating my own schedule. And I think that's probably why we loved being on the road so much, because when we started traveling, we kind of felt like that was the ultimate form of creating your own rules, creating your own life and business and stuff. It's like we've kind of made it up as we went the past 5 or 6 years. But, that was a big draw for me in business. It's like you can create value that is helpful for other people. And also you get to spend time with your family, or now we have an 11-month-old and we get to control that while also still helping other people. And that's a big value, I think, with being an entrepreneur on the road.
On the other hand, I remember telling my dad in like high school or middle school, like, when I grow up, I want to work for like a big corporation and like have my own cubicle and like all.
You wanted to be an accountant.
What kind of dream is that? I like in retrospect, I'm like, I was like the stupidest kid, but obviously it was a much better path. So I was not a born entrepreneur. I worked at a nonprofit out of college. I had my own office, though. You did. That was like, I was a cut above cubicle, and I was like, yeah, I don't like working for someone else.
Used it for watching Netflix, mostly.
I did watch Netflix at work.
That's funny. I know that, like, I'm part of your RV Entrepreneur Facebook group, and I'm also a part of a few other full-time families groups, and, escapers and boondockers welcome, and a whole bunch of different groups all about RVing. And a question comes up over and over and over: how do you make money on the road? So I just want to extend the invitation for everybody who's watching. If you have any questions right now about how to create income on the road, how to build a business, how to run a business on the road, maybe you're running a business, maybe you're already on the road but interested in starting a business, or maybe you own a business and you're ready to get on the road and you want to figure out how that works, just go ahead and ask that comment in the ask that question in the comments where you're watching, either on Facebook or YouTube, and we'll be sure that Heath and Alyssa are forced to answer all the questions that come in from any channel. The first question that has come in already is somebody's asking, you wanted a cubicle from the RVers team.
I wasn't really smart.
So I know one of the questions, or one of the opportunities that we have on the road is dependability on internet connection, because a lot of us can imagine a business we could run as long as we have reliable internet. How have you found that to be on the road?
It's like, it's not a problem anymore. When we first started RVing, it was RV park Wi-Fi. I mean, still isn't great, but it was very hard to find, or you had to like pay $5 just to connect to their Wi-Fi. You're starting to see that less and less, or maybe we're just starting to pay for a little bit nicer of RV parks than we did during our first year on the road. But we use an unlimited AT&T hotspot, and then we have unlimited Verizon on our phones. So between those two, we at least have some sort of coverage everywhere. I mean, your speeds and everything are obviously going to differ depending on what areas you're in. But for us now, whenever we're looking at where we want to go, that's not a consideration that we actually take into account anymore. Whereas the first couple of years on the road, it was definitely like, well, what's the Wi-Fi situation like? We need to go there. We need to test it before we commit to staying in this area for a week, because we need internet to run our business.
Now, mostly on Campendium, Campground Reviews, they're ranking Wi-Fi and cellular signal at all these locations. So I think most of the time it's like, if we really need to know that we have a Zoom call one day, then we'll make sure that we are going to not. It's more about not driving on those days than anything. Most of the time, between AT&T. Or our Verizon, or, even more recently, I feel like the parks that we've been staying in have had pretty decent internet. That hasn't been the case for a long time, but like you said, that's improving too. And then right now we disconnected because we were on a different Wi-Fi, and then we have a Wi-Fi repeater in the front part of our RV. So that's been really helpful too.
Well, the fact that RV manufacturers are starting to build in things like Wi-Fi repeaters is really helpful.
Exactly, yeah. So I switched that, and if you're not familiar, basically it repeats the cell signal. I feel like a lot of people watch the RVers also watch.
It does not repeat the cell signal.
Wi-Fi signal, sorry.
See, this is why it gets confusing.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's been helpful too.
Yes.
We've got a question coming in from the RV Geeks, and they're saying running one business on the road can be challenging enough. How do you two manage so much? So kind of give us the high level overview of the businesses that you run from the road, and then maybe a few tips on how you manage multiple avenues all at once.
I will preface all of this by saying that, we'll see in 5 years how good these businesses are doing, and just take that into a grain of salt. I just always like to preface it by saying that we're figuring out all this all the time, but we have quite a few things that we do. So we have our conference, so we've done that for 4 years. We had about a little over 400 people that came this year to the virtual one. It was going to be 350 in person.
They came.
Yeah, they virtualized the experience. Alyssa's published a book. She also is the main person who runs our website, Heath and Alyssa. And so that has ads, and we've done the podcast, which has had sponsors. So there's a business there. And then I have Campground Booking, which is a back-end property management software for campgrounds. And we have a couple different other products that we sell. So that's in quite a few campgrounds now that are using that system.
We used to do we had a video production company, and we helped people film and launch courses online and other random film stuff. We do weddings and conferences and things like that. We did all three of those at a time for a while. We don't do we don't do film production anymore because it takes up so much time, and we wanted to focus on heathalyssa.com and campground booking. But we still do some freelance work. I'm doing an ebook redesign right now, so just random projects and things like that whenever we have time.
I think it's just a constant. It's almost been a 6 to 12 month plan every year, or it's always changing, right?
When have we ever had our life planned 6 months out in advance?
Yeah, it's been a constant iteration. Some years we've prioritized travel more than we have work. So in 2018 and 2017, actually, is probably a better example. We were we want to go up to the East Coast, and we really want to see the colors change in the fall. And that was a priority that we set. And at that time, we were doing more client-facing work. And so instead of letting the business dictate the travel, we were we're going to go do that, and we'll figure out what type of client projects we can get along the way. We ended up pitching a chain of campgrounds on videos, and we got 5 of those baked into the trip. It covered a bunch of costs. We made money, and we got to go see and we spent a lot of time at beaches. We saw the colors change in the fall, and that was really fun. And then some years business has won out over the travel, and I don't know. It's been a constant blend of figuring out what stage of life we're in. What do we need to focus on?
Well, in 2017, we were trying to finish paying off our student debt. So it was all about prioritizing getting work done and travel. And then in 2018, we had paid it off, so we went to New Zealand.
For 2 months. I did YouTube just because it was fun. We wanted to.
Yeah, YouTube is fun.
So Christine is asking, and I think this ties in really well to the last question. Christine says, I've learned so much from you and your community, and she says thanks, and a lot of it centers on your amazing success. Do you have any regrets or had any missed opportunities that you've learned from? So if you could go back in time a couple years, what might happen a little different?
Do you have an easy answer, or do you want me to go first?
You can go first. I have something too, but I don't know if it's a positive regret or a negative regret.
I feel like all regrets are negative. I would say for me, it's that it's really easy. So I have a constant back and forth between, and it also depends on where you're at in your career. But me personally, I struggle sometimes to enjoy all the beautiful places that we're fortunate enough to be able to go to, because I get there and I'm this is amazing. But then I'm also I have a Zoom call and a demo today, and I'm onboarding a new support person, and and then I'm okay, I'm young and I should be working and hustling and all that stuff. So for me, it's been, I think my only regret that I have is, maybe it's a regret, but it's just I've probably missed out on experiencing some of these places as much as I could have because I was worried or stressed about those things.
But it's at the same time, you could also have never been there because you didn't live in an RV and run your business while traveling.
Point, yeah. So I would say but even with that being said, with some of those regrets, I guess, we've still gotten to see so many places that we would have never gotten to see had we not made the choice to go hit the road and travel in our RV. So, I wouldn't necessarily say that's a regret. It's just more something I'm working on. It is kind of iterating on that balance between, and also now that we have an 11-month-old baby, that is changed even more. What do you have?
Well, my one we had to say no to doing, it was like an online TV show, and I wanted to do it so bad. I was like, Heath, this is like exactly what it's been on my bucket list for like decades. I've always wanted to host my own TV show. Someone came to us and was like, we want you to do this.
Like the RVers, maybe? No, I'm kidding.
Funny. But that's not the show we're talking about, though.
I know.
And we had to say no just because we had another project, another film project going on, and we didn't have the time for it, but it worked out in the end because then I was pregnant and I got too sick and I couldn't have filmed anyway. But
could have made for a good story arc.
It would have made a great story arc. But I just think about that sometimes because I really wanted to do it. So
I think to kind of come back to a question you didn't ask, we went on the road because we didn't want to have to regret not taking this chance. Like, It's corny, and, you know, I've probably said it a million times on the podcast, so I apologize, Adam, because you probably heard me say this, but it's like, we...
Apologize
like,
to me. I hear it all.
No, but I mean, seriously, when we were thinking about, do we hit the road at 23 at the time, the biggest question in the back of my head was, will I regret, like, taking a year, maybe taking a step back in my career, maybe not paying as much of my student loans as I should this year. I'll get back to them, which we did.
$0.
But the ultimate idea behind getting on the road was like, will I possibly regret not going to travel and, you know, this thing that's really important for us. And so we don't have to do that regret, which I think I feel good about. Yeah.
So we're talking to entrepreneurs and we're talking about opportunities, and I'm sure you're very much like other entrepreneurs, or maybe I should ask if you are, in the sense that opportunities seem to pop up like every 3.5 minutes, and new ideas and new concepts, and what if we created this or what if we created that? So how do you guys kind of filter those opportunities, and does being on the road factor into that at all?
We write a lot of pro and con lists. We got a magnetic dry erase board on our refrigerator that has been used for a lot of pro and con lists this year, trying to make decisions like that, because Heath is definitely an idea guy, always with another business idea and another thing that we could possibly do. But I don't know how we really choose.
I think this past year has actually been easier in some ways because we've had some decisions, like we've had a lot of things going on with the conference, with the baby, with Campground Bucking, that we've had a lot of forward momentum in certain areas, and it's been easier to say no because we wouldn't even entertain them because we have like a path of something that's taking up more than time than we need, like a startup and a baby, which is like a human startup.
The key is to be very busy, and then your decision will be made for you.
I think
the answer is no.
That's probably terrible advice, but I honestly think that for the past year or two, that's been helpful. That wasn't always our answer, but for this season of life, that for me is...
I think having a baby in general is like okay, I've got someone else I'm responsible for now. I need to make wiser decisions faster.
Yeah.
So how does that change, or how did you find it change now that you have a baby girl? Did you notice anything right away? I know for me, getting on the road, we have 3 boys, and they're 6, 8, and 10 or something like that, and because they always keep changing their ages. And, you know, for me, working from an office to working on the road with 3 kids, completely different. How did you notice that when your daughter was born?
That was rough. I think it helped. We spent some time in an apartment when she was born, and that was like a big decision for us because whenever, before we got pregnant or before we knew we were pregnant, we were trying to decide if we wanted to sell our Winnebago and buy a campground, if we wanted to like buy a house somewhere, if we wanted to keep RVing. And we really had no idea which way we wanted to go. And then as soon as we found out we were pregnant, we were like, we're going to sell the RV. We're going to be stationary, be in a place where we can have a doctor and all that sort of thing. And it worked out really well for us for like the first month of Ellie's life. And then we were like, we're stir crazy. We're just going to hop in the car and go road trip it out to Colorado for a few days. And so really for us, we realized like with Ellie, while she's young and immobile, we're going to do as much traveling as we can. Here in the past month, she started running, and
she's like a pinball machine in our RV
just like
right
bouncing around in the RV.
Yeah.
And now it's impossible to get work done, and you can't like go to Starbucks and get a break because they're so close. So that has been a very interesting and difficult business working. I can't even talk right now. But
I think everyone's sorting through that right now, though.
Yeah, I think that's
working from home.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. If we're not quarantining forever, which won't be the case, then we'll have that option again that we can just stagger, and Heath can go to Starbucks in the mornings and I could go in the afternoons, and we can still both get work done. So.
Yeah. So that is basically how we've been doing that, is figuring it out.
But also, I've gotten very little done in the past month, work-wise.
Yeah.
It leads to an interesting question, because I think that a lot of people who wanted to work from home up until like really recently are now found out that their job can be done remotely. And also, you know, people who were hesitant about homeschooling are in a position where they don't really have a choice. I mean, whether or not they're actually doing the schoolwork, that's probably a choice. But do you think this will affect how many families we see and how many people we see on the road who decide to go full-timing when we've realized a lot of our jobs can be done virtual, and we've kind of forced ourselves into experiencing what it could be like on the road?
I think if people already had that seed planted, then this is like a great kind of trial run just to see are you going to go crazy being stuck in one place with your whole family 24/7, and if you can handle it or not. Because I know for a lot of people, they'll email me and be like, hey, like, I really want to do this, but like my wife is unsure, or like, I don't know if my kids will want to do it, all that sort of stuff. So like, this is a great kind of like miniature test run just to see like baseline, do we not kill each other being stuck all in one house? Because if we can make it through this, then, hey, maybe we could do it in an even smaller space, and we can go out to the mountains or the beach and travel around. So I think it's been a great test run for people. For us, it was like, oh, maybe we need to be somewhere closer to Ellie's grandparents so that we can have a little bit of support.
Yeah.
Of course.
I know our friend Wes has 4 kids, and he's working from home right now, and he was already wanting to get an RV, and he was telling his wife, Tira, he's like, oh, babe, we're working from home now anyway. We can just hit the road.
Yeah.
So I would say yes. I know there's been a lot of people from the RV industry that's been posting a ton of articles about, you know, like RVing and camping are going to ramp up because it's a safer way to travel, or, you know, and that totally makes sense. So I think we'll see in the next coming months if that is accurate. I know a lot of campgrounds are starting to open or have projected open dates. And I know some tour companies are still planning to do smaller RV tours, like up to Alaska. Anyway, so there's indications that more people are getting on the road. I don't know if that's existing or what, but I think we'll see this summer what that looks like.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
News anchor saying all that.
It'll be interesting to see how this all pans out in a few months or a few years, and looking back, you know, how this did or didn't affect the RV industry long term. Adriana is asking, when you guys started out, how did you start out RVing money-wise? What did you do financially when you started out?
Yeah, so we had about $20,000 in the bank in savings, and we basically spent $11,000 to buy a used motorhome off Craigslist. It resembled the RV off Breaking Bad. It was a Class C motorhome. And then we had a small amount that was coming in like a month or two from my job whenever we left. And
what?
Like I had a couple payments from You Earned It. No, that wasn't the case. Okay, so nix that. And one of the things we did was we wanted to go travel to all 50 states our first year, and we didn't have the funds to go do that. And so I sent a cold email to a job board called, like, we basically, to back up a little bit more, we came up with a project which was like, hey, we want to go travel the country. We need a way to make money and we want to like do something fun that pushes our comfort zone. So I came up with the idea to work a job in all 50 states and just apprentice people. And we could go in and kind of shadow them. It'd be fun. We could go to national parks between, and I would learn a lot about different careers. And I just thought it would be an interesting project to do. And I pitched a job board on that concept. And we didn't have any type of online following or anything like that. We just were random 23-year-olds, and they took us seriously enough to send us $1,000 a month and a camera and ask us if we'd like to document it and turn it into a documentary project. And we did. And so we traveled the country for a year, and a couple months in, we started pitching like freelance like sites for us to like write blog articles.
Like do-it-yourself RV.
Yeah, you know, like so some things like that kind of started paying, like, oh, this is paying the phone bill this month, and then we built up those skills in video. And 9 months in, from not having any video experience, we got our first video client. It was like $1,000 for a half-day shoot after shooting like 2 to 3 days a week, volunteering for free at conferences, kind of building our network. And then also,
you got a consulting gig helping an author plan a cross-country tour.
Yeah, he was like, you're in an RV. I want to do a book launch tour. So like we got that client, which was a long-term project. So we kind of piecemealed together a lot of different projects that first year, and we basically had a little bit of financial runway and savings to go do this trip. And we were like, worst case scenario, we come back and get jobs once we hit a certain amount before our funds run out, or not completely run out, but the point that we're comfortable at them getting to. And we'll go get a job and we'll have this cool experience, this honeymoon. And then once we started traveling, we realized we loved it and we wanted to keep doing it as long as possible. And those funds didn't run out, so we kept doing it.
But it worked out. Like the very first year, to go to all 50 states, it cost $23,000, and we earned like $20,000. So we only had to spend $3,000 out of our savings account.
Yeah.
So that was huge.
At the time, I thought that was a really good number. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But now a lot of RVers, I feel like, compete on how inexpensive they can travel. So I would just say that you can probably travel for much cheaper than that. We didn't know. We just bought an RV and started going.
I think you can actually visit all 50 states in something like 4 days if you just like drive nonstop. If you really want to do it cheap.
Yeah. So for us, we were trying to do things pretty inexpensively. So we tried to skim as much as we could, but we didn't know what boondocking was. Like, there wasn't as many articles when we first started out that
it was basically just the winds and Technomania back then.
And John and Peter were doing something. I'm not sure what. Maybe they were.
Where
around.
was y'all's blog back then, guys?
We just hadn't found it yet. So anyway, but that's how we got started, and that's what led us into doing the things that we're doing now.
Cool. Well, if you're watching right now and you run a business from the road, leave it in the comments. Tell us what your business is. We're interested to find out who's watching and what that business is that you run from the road. I know you guys have an ebook about 50 businesses that can be run from the road. Which business or which kinds of businesses do you see as the most popular option if you don't happen to, get an agreement to get $1,000 a month and a camera sent from a sponsor right off the hop? So somebody wants to start a business or somebody runs a business. What kind of the most popular businesses that you see run from the road?
Freelance.
I would say, service-based businesses. Looking at our conference, we asked people what kind of businesses they're running. Mm-hmm. And I would say by and large, the majority of people that are doing it, that are part of at least the RV entrepreneur community, are running some type of service-based business, whether it's consulting or building websites like you do. Or maybe I'm trying to think of some other ones.
Maybe they're writers, maybe they're photographers. Yeah. Maybe you work in marketing or brand management, PR, any of those things, like just finding short-term or even long-term clients that are fine with you working remote. Because that's something that you can do while you're working a full-time job. Just take whatever skills you have from that, find yourself some clients, a side hustle, as they say, and you can ramp that up and then be in a way better position when you start RVing compared to Heath and I with having no income plans.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people. Our friend Sinead teaches remotely. She just does a remote substitute teacher for different schools.
I didn't even know that was a thing, like a remote substitute teacher. So she doesn't have to be teaching all of the time. There's also like remote, remote doctors, remote lawyers, like all the things that you would think that you have to be in one location all of the time. It's becoming more and more travel friendly.
I think some of my favorite businesses that people run, though, are people who marry multiple passions together. Like our friends, the Holcomb family, they're adventure photographers and kayakers. And so they spend like 300 days a year out on the water, taking photos, kayaking, two things they love, and they also pay the bills. We have some friends, Ken and April, who have been to a couple of our conferences, and they love beer. Who doesn't? But they go around and they get gigs at different breweries and things like that, sharing people's stories. And now they're paid contributors to different beer journals and magazines and things like that. And so I love that because in a way that's kind of what we've done as well. I mean, we love traveling. We like being in the RV, and Alyssa wrote a book about it. And I started a campground software company. And so these are things that are more integrated. And I think that's a commonality with a lot of people who choose to do the RV life, maybe pre-retirement, is that a lot of people have these weird integrated lives where we get to travel, we get to be in pretty places, but we're getting work done. And a lot of people that hit the road are also doing work in the RV industry. There's a lot of companies that will hire people even if you have less talent because you're in the space. Like, I know that sounds weird, but I know there's a lot of companies that are in the RV industry that are like willing to hire people just because they're familiar, they're in the community, if that makes sense. They know the terms, they know the language, they can talk to people. So whether it's from a customer support perspective, we've hired now a few different customer support people for campground booking, and they're all RVers. And the reason we've done that is because they know the language. They can talk to campers or parks and things like that. So I think there's a lot of opportunities available for people. And even you got a lot of gigs once you got on the road. Like, so not to say that a good way to get a job is to buy an RV and travel, but it's also not a good way to get a job.
Well, yeah, I think there's also like totally non-RV related ideas too. Like we have some friends that we met and they're mentioned in the little ebook download too. They travel to different NASCAR events and they just have like a booth that they set up where people can race remote control cars. Like that's their whole business, and they just travel around to different events all year long. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah. So many different things. It's just like with any business. It's like the sky's the limit. If you can run it remotely, which you probably can, then you can do it on the road.
So maybe you could think of one really unique business, because I know you've interviewed a lot of people on your podcast. What is kind of the one that stands out as one of the most unique, or maybe when you heard about it, you thought, I never would have thought of running a business like that from the road. Can you think of one?
Knife engraver.
Oh, yeah. That was a weird one. He
engraves knives from his RV, and he's converted like a workstation in the back to do custom engraving on these knives. And he does it to fund his passion, which is to travel around as part of the RV care of Vanners.
Habitat for Humanity.
Which is like a subsection of Habitat for Humanity. And they go around, and there are people in RVs who like build houses as a specific effort, and they can go from build to build. So it was awesome. I love talking with him. And
that was
really
super
fun.
Unique one. The photo of like how he just like built out a workbench in his RV, just made room for it so he could travel with it. That is probably one of the most unique ones.
Yeah.
I was going to say my favorite, now it doesn't seem unique compared to hand engraving knives, but I think her name was Katie or Kate. She does photo editing on the road. So she used to be like a wedding photographer, and now she just edits photos for other photographers. I'm like, that's like the ultimate like niche, being able to literally do it from anywhere, because people just like send you the Dropbox link, you edit them and send them back, and you can do that anywhere you have Wi-Fi.
And she actually did that because she wanted to get on the road. So there's been a lot of people who have
it's a good pivot,
who have tried to figure out like, how can I take my existing business and or skill set and translate it into something that can be remote. And maybe it takes a couple years, but I think there's so many good examples. And that's why I've really enjoyed the RV entrepreneur community, is because a lot of times if you're thinking about wanting to get on the road, or it doesn't seem possible, or that everybody who does it has to be high tech, you go in there and you realize, oh, there's a knife engraver who's doing this or whatever. And it's basically like you meet other people who are doing it. It seems less crazy, and it seems more feasible that you can make it work, and be able to go travel to some really cool places and get to work from anywhere. So.
Danielle is asking more specifically about the name of the ebook and where she can download it. I know it's on heathandalyssa.com. That's your blog, but can you tell us?
On the page.
Yeah, so if you just go, heathandalyssa.com/business-ideas.
Yeah, but it's also right there on the homepage.
It's basically a synopsis of 50 episodes of the podcast, so it's just a free ebook.
It's way more than 50.
Oh, it's way more than 50?
Yeah, because you've had like 20 episodes where everyone's a blogger.
Oh, okay.
So that's all
stupid bloggers.
Blogger. I'm in there.
Yeah. Anyway, so but there are 50 different ideas.
Do you want to talk about the most popular business that people run on the road. Based on if you're polling here and you're basing it just on his podcast, it's blogger, hand down.
Or writing.
Down. Time gig.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Like a lot, like people are like us, like I run our blog, you run our software company, you kind of do different things, but
so if somebody wants to be a blogger, because I know I hear about that all the time as well, and we blog as well, but what kind of timeline is a typical blogger before they're making the kind of money that could support them for any amount of time on the road? I mean, I guess anybody can become an overnight success, but generally speaking,
I think it obviously depends on the industry level of experience and like a million other things. We started writing in 2011 on our own respective blogs and probably went through like 4 or 5 iterations before we found a niche. So it took like 7 years.
It was like zero from 2011. I did a workshop on this for our summit. So it was $0 from 2011 to 2016. We made like $500. So that was like something finally.
Baller. And
then it was like 20,000 in 2017. And then we hit 6 figures in 2018. So it's like a nice slow for like 6 years. And then you can really do something.
I think it's also worth noting that for us, like we didn't go into it trying to make it a business. We went into it because we like writing.
We wanted to write books.
And we wanted to write books.
And I did write a book. And you did write a book.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I still journal every day. And so it's something that we enjoyed. And for us, it was more about this is a skill and we like doing it. And we feel it helps us document the things that we're doing. And I don't treat it as our full-time business. For me, it's a place to go and share. Here's what I'm learning. Like as we went to do all 50 states, we did this documentary. It was this really fun experience, and we were making this documentary. But it was a place to share. Here's these lessons I'm learning, and at the very least, there was always something that made me feel like it wasn't a waste of time. If I had done it with the expectation that I was going to be, raking in mad dough as a full-time blogger, some people do. So it's not crazy,
right?
And if that's your goal, then that's totally legit. People make great money. Just like with any other profession if they do it well. But for us, that wasn't the goal. It was a place to share the things that we're learning while doing other things. Like, it wasn't to be a social media influencer. It was to just share things that we're doing and document it in a way that's like, hey, I'm building a software business, or we're doing all 50 states this year and we're working a documentary. How can we share what we're learning in a way that brings other people along? And maybe they like it. And if not, then we'll show our daughter one day as like a home video.
So Bob is asking, what's one mistake or what is one tip that you might have for somebody who is ready to get on the road and ready to start their business?
One tip to get on the road and start their business?
Just one.
Well, not just one, but at least one would be good.
Set expectations as far as how much time you're going to spend focusing on just like travel and enjoying it, and how much time you're going to focus on your business. I think if you can get momentum with your business before you get on the road, that making the transition will be a whole lot easier, just because if you go from a zero to you're in an RV, you're traveling, and you're trying to figure out how to run a business at the same time, it's like your brain is just on overload. You're doing so many new things at once. We've experienced this. We've learned. Yeah. And so to be able to like at least have momentum in one area before you try to like do everything at once, I think is really helpful. And just have expectations that this is going to be hard some days, and maybe I have a meeting or a sales call, or maybe I lose a client, or maybe I'm going on a hike and I forget that I was supposed to be in a meeting, and I have to text them and say like, oh, there was a crisis. Sorry, let's reschedule for tomorrow. I'm on top of a mountain. That's never happened to us. Right. So set expectations. Yeah. What do you think?
I would say two things. One is choosing if you want to work or not. Like most of us don't have the luxury. We have to work.
I was just to say, we have to work.
But I guess what I'm saying is that I've seen some people who have made the transition of being on the road, and you can tell they spent so much of their time working to try to build something that if they had a year of funds to go travel, they may have just enjoyed the trip. Like they may have just enjoyed the journey. And so like my fear in talking about working on the road is that if somebody had an opportunity Like they had the funds saved up to say, I'm going to travel for 6 months. And they used all of that time and they didn't enjoy it because they were too busy trying to work, that maybe their time would have been better spent just like going on a 6-month awesome trip that they really appreciated and then going back to work. So I would say that like maybe that is relatable. Maybe it's not.
Well, I think that's true. Like full-time RVing is not for everybody.
Yeah.
It may be kind of trendy right now, but
yeah.
Part-time is just as awesome.
Yeah. And I would say that on the flip side, that if you do want to do it long-term, I think about things in terms of runway. So for us, we knew we had 7 months of runway when we first started. And once we realized we loved traveling and we were mostly just playing and having fun, it became a game to us. Like, how can we extend this runway? And I know you're laughing at him because I probably talked about this a million times on the podcast, but Bob may have not listened to the podcast, so I'll say it anyway, like it's fresh and new. But the whole idea for us, and that's kind of been the case from the very beginning, is like, how can we cut costs? And you can control a lot of those variables when you live in an RV.
Yep.
How can we cut costs and extend how much we're making so that we can have more opportunities? Because if you are set on wanting to work on the road and make this lifestyle work, it'll probably take 2 or 3 times as long as you think it will. And so you just want to make sure that you don't put yourself in a bad place. We were young and irresponsible. I don't encourage that. It worked out and we were lucky, but I would want to make sure that if we were sharing advice with anybody else, that it's like, hey, be thoughtful of your runway. And if you think it's going to take, 6 to 12 months to get your business going, maybe you realistically need 18 to 24 months of runway in order to be comfortable. I know.
Have that runway in your mind full time.
Obviously it depends for everyone, but that would be one way that I would think about it. And for us, like, it was, again, when we made a first like couple blog posts that we got paid for, it was like, hey, that paid our phone bill this month. And then it was like, how can we chip away?
I don't think it ever paid our phone bill. Our phone bill was like $200. We got paid like $25 to guest blog for Good Sam.
You get the point, though. Yeah.
So, one last question, and this one's a little off topic from business, but Rick is asking, have you ever considered anything other than a motorhome? So maybe if somebody's thinking about getting on the road, they're looking at different types of rigs. Maybe tell us a little bit about your experience with the motorhome, and is that where you're sticking with motorhomes, or would you ever consider something else?
I still have this weird fascination with truck campers.
No.
I feel like that ship has sailed, especially now that we have a kid. But we've had 3 different motorhomes. So we had a Class C, a Class A gas, and now a Class A diesel. And we've also spent a lot of time traveling internationally
in Bs.
In Class Bs, like with Peter and John in Italy and in New Zealand and Canada. So we had smaller rigs.
We've done pretty much every type of motorhome. I love motorhomes. I love that I can grab something out of the fridge or like run to the bathroom whenever Heath is driving or sleep. That's great too. And just being able to have everything in one space and then having a small car. For me, that's one of the biggest things that I hear from people that tow is I wish I didn't have to take a giant truck into downtown Austin or into wherever I'm going, which I had never really thought of before, but being able to at least have one vehicle that's actually like gas efficient that I can take into towns or wherever it is that we are, I really appreciate that. Mm-hmm. So I think the only scenario where I would see us getting a towable would be if we were just part-timing and we wanted to have something just to like do short trips in the summer or something like that, because you don't want your engine in a motorhome just to be sitting and not being used for months at a time.
Or if we bought a campground and we just wanted to have a fifth wheel or a trailer there and it wasn't really going any place, we might do something like that. So
I'm really amazed that you made it through that whole thing without ever saying how much you want an Airstream.
Oh, sorry. Airstreams are cool too. I was thinking about I think we would potentially do a different type of rig if we did the Alcan Highway again, the Alaskan Highway. I don't know.
What different rig would you do?
I don't know. We haven't talked about it. It's a whole different
I would want a big Bama Jamma that could take a grizzly in a fight if that happened. We saw a lot of bears when we did the Alcan. They get real close to you.
Nobody plans on driving through, but yeah, anyway. Yeah.
So, I'd say motorhome. Heath will...
We love motorhomes, yeah.
I don't know what you're thinking.
Well, my wife and I were planning to go through to Alaska this summer, and we're not sure that's going to happen. So we'll find out how that works with a towable. But I will mention we have an SUV with our trailer, and every time we go into like a parking garage and there's like 4.5 inches of clearance, I always open the sunroof and I duck my head, as if ducking my head is going to change the height of my vehicle, right? But it's like something's close. I don't know, I feel that my neck hurts, and I realize I've been ducking for like 3 floors in a parking garage because of the SUV. So that makes sense with the towable. Guys, if somebody's watching later and they have other questions for you, what's the best way for them to track you down online?
Probably Alyssa's cell phone number here. No, I'm kidding.
Keith has given my cell phone number away to people on
Kelsey?
Yes.
Y'all became best friends.
But it's still a creepy thing for you to do.
Probably just Heath and Alyssa.
On Instagram.
Yeah, Heath and Alyssa on Instagram is a good place.
Or here on Facebook if you're live on Facebook. We're also on YouTube, but we only really post videos when we're in cool countries. Yeah. And we're just in America right now.
Yeah. We need to plan another road trip with John and Peter. So
yeah,
if y'all are watching,
Japan 2021.
Comment on where you want to go. Oh, Japan. Yeah, we were planning a tentative road trip to Japan pending State of the World.
Yeah.
Have they finished the bridge to Japan yet? Or is there like only part of that's a road trip?
Yeah, they're working on it. They said it'll be done in a few months.
Yeah. I have no idea what's happening here.
It's a joke, Heath.
That's what I figured.
We're gonna actually, so like camper vans, I've done a lot of research. In Japan are basically just like minivans. They're really small, but like Japan's mostly islands. There's like 4 major islands, and they'll just ferry your van on over. So yeah, let's do it.
Well, Peter and John are now saying, now that Ellie can walk and has some teeth, will she be named the CEO? So I'll let you take that up with Peter and John of the RV Geeks. Tell us a little bit about all the other places that people can track you down, because I know it's not just your blog, which is heathandalyssa.com, or not just on Instagram, which is Heath and Alyssa, but there's my favorite connection, which is your podcast, The RV Entrepreneur. But tell us about some of the other channels that people can track you down.
If you have a lot of questions about RVing, if you find the RV Entrepreneur group on Facebook, that's a great place to just connect with other people and ask more questions about business or just getting into the RV life. Like if you should get a motorhome or a towable. I'm sure a lot of people in our group have opinions on that too.
Many of them may be valid.
Maybe valid. You hear that? Your opinion may be valid.
Well, thank you guys for hanging out tonight. I had a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing your segment on the RVers show coming up on season 2, and we'll make sure that we're tagging each other on all the social medias so we can track each other down and make sure we all get to see those segments. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out tonight, and thank you for being part of the RVers family.
Thanks so much, Adam.